Boom, here it is. Here's your breaking news. Kirk Cousins is going to the Atlanta Falcons. He is leaving Minnesota. He is going to Atlanta.
Saquon Barkley now has a deal with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Russell Wilson, for next to no money because the Broncos are paying him, is going to Pittsburgh.
A massive deal for Christian Wilkins, who now lands with the Las Vegas Raiders. The Green Bay Packers are signing Josh Jacobs.
DeAndre Swift headed to the Chicago Bears.
3 years, $24 million for Tony Pollard and the Tennessee Titans.
Oh my goodness. It's Insiders Christmas. Day one of the legal tampering period as we close in on the official start of a new league year on Wednesday. And yes, the moves were hot and heavy across the NFL, and we are here around the NFL to document everything that's happened as of 4:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll continue to track things as we record this show. And like we said, we'll be doing shows all week. So everything you need to know about this big week on the league calendar, we got you. Dan Hanzus here, Marc Sessler, Gregg Rosenthal, and here we go. Here we go, boys. It has started, and it is a frenzy, as NFL Network advertises.
I don't even know if we need to do a show after that intro. We spoiled it all. That's it. That's it right there. Give me those bass drums and maybe we'll just dance.
I thought that, by doing an extra show yesterday, which we did not plan to do out of the gate, we helped ourselves,
right
that we maybe, cleared the deck. And about a couple hours into today, it is a bushel of frenzy, a tornado of news items. I feel blinded. I'm just sitting in my hotel room, getting whipsawed by the news coming.
No
left
Van
and right,
Ginkel in that opening credits. Some say that's a shot.
It's a shot at Van Ginkel, but you know what he's going to do with that.
Look at it this way, Mark. If we didn't do the Sunday surprise ep, we're looking at a Killers of the Flower Moon length show today, Monday. So we did take care of business and we got ahead of it as best we could. But let's get into it. And yeah, the big move, and you heard it there off the bat, was Kirk Cousins. And you knew Cousins was going to get paid handsomely. That's what Kirk Cousins does. You also knew
some balloons coming up in your room there,
what just
Mark.
happened? Why the balloon just went up on Sessler's screen?
I mean, it's beautiful. We're just trying to get people to check out the YouTube. It's wonderful.
I have no idea why that would have happened.
I think Randy is part of all of this.
Randy, focus. I know your team made a lateral move at running back today in Green Bay, but we don't need to be, not taking this serious. Gravitas is the order of the day as we get into the Kirk Cousins conversation after a run in Minnesota that featured a ton of production, not a lot of playoff success, but on balance, Cousins again over his time with the Vikings, just like in his run with Washington, proved himself to be a answer at quarterback and a stable figure and a well-liked individual. You knew he was going to get the bag. And on the first day of the legal tampering period, he does. And it's from the Atlanta Falcons, who agreed to a 4-year, $180 million contract that came straight from his agent. His agent broke the news, I believe, which is ouchers to all the insiders there. So Cousins finally brings some legitimacy to the quarterback position in Atlanta, Greg, a team that has been making incremental progress in the last couple of years, but it was always the quarterback that was holding them back. And while Cousins has not, so far in his career, shown us that he is a Super Bowl level quarterback, a championship quarterback, man, this is a massive upgrade and a no-brainer move, I think, for the Falcons.
Yeah, I think it made sense for all sides, which is not a hot take, but it's starting with ownership in terms of Atlanta saying we need a quarterback, and I think they're the ones pushing this. That they made this happen. Arthur Blank. He was just sick of watching what he was watching, and he was going to make it happen. I think it also makes sense that this is the time that Minnesota lets Kirk go. And the minute I started really believing Kirk was going to Atlanta was on Sunday, when we just kept hearing over and over how Minnesota's really trying. Every single report was like, oh, Minnesota's really trying. They're staying in it. And it's like that. Those are the reports of a front office that knows they're losing their guy and wants everyone to know that they tried their hardest. And I'm sure they had a reasonable deal. And I think they are making a smart move, even as Atlanta is making a smart move in signing Kirk Cousins. I think Minnesota is making a smart move in choosing now, 36 years old, entering next season, coming off a torn Achilles, to be the time that you cut the cord and stop giving this guy this much money.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the time ended in Minnesota, and you can tell that they're team building in a way where they're moving away potentially from Cousins, and it's like they have to find a quarterback. But I love the landing spot in Atlanta. I think that Cousins, if it, he is 36, but if you get just 3 more years of him, and I think it could be more than that, he goes to a place that essentially was missing only a quarterback last year. And like, if you're Arthur Smith, you're thinking, if you had Kirk Cousins a year ago, everything would have been different. I think for guys like Drake London, this is a level beyond human trigger pull that changes your career. We might finally get to see Kyle Pitts the way we've wanted to see him. It's great for Bijan Robinson. You've got Zach Robinson, I think is a good fit for Kirk Cousins. And Raheem Morris, first year coach here in Atlanta, he came in saying, we want to do this. This was the one thing that got the last coach fired, and they went and did it in a short order. And I really love it for Falcons fans because I think it changes that division entirely. And it's like you plug a quarterback into a team that probably could have made the playoffs last year if they had gotten 30-40% better quarterback play.
The Falcons ranked 26th in points per game last year, 22nd in passing yards. So Cousins, I mean, you're paying big time. It's $100 million we're hearing in guaranteed money for Cousins. So you're paying at a premium. That's going to come with other challenges now for Atlanta moving forward. But I think this was a move that, while making sense, also was one. It was almost like they threw their hands up and they're like, we've tried it different ways since Matt Ryan got old, and now we're just going to throw money at the problem and hope that Cousins, yes, coming off a torn Achilles tendon, entering his age 36 season, will be that guy. I thought, thinking about the deal and what it means in the NFC South, that the Baker deal in Tampa Bay, to me, which I already didn't love, it looks even a little worse now because the reason they won that division at 9-8 is because, in large part, Atlanta wasn't ready to make the leap. And I think certainly the desert is going to establish now that the Falcons are going to win that division. How deep can they go? Is this a team that can make a run in the playoffs? We'll see. But there's pieces, Greg. That's the reason why, you guys were always more into the Falcons than I was. But this is a roster that is pretty close to making a run if they just got that competent quarterback play. And that's what Cousins does.
Probably, but they're totally different now. Their defense was overrated last year. They were good in a couple points per game and stuff like that. But talent-wise, they're fine. And if you kind of look, beneath the hood, as you would say, Dan, and DVOA, all that stuff, they were a mediocre defense. It's going to be a totally different defense. I like Raheem Morris as a hire. We'll see how that works out. I think it'll work out, but it's a new offense. Kirk Cousins fits well in this offense. Drake London is a good number one. Is he a great number one? We'll see. He's a nice guy to have. Pitts, to me, is a question mark. I'm not suddenly saying, okay, Kyle Pitts is going to be awesome now. Kirk Cousins is a very up and down quarterback. He is a streaky quarterback who at the end of the season looks like he's very consistent, but he'll be on fire for 7 games. Then he'll struggle for 7 games or 4 games. Vikings fans know that. And I think he was worth the gamble. But it is funny that they kind of spent 2 to 3 years getting out of their old cap hell with Matt Ryan and all the dead cap that they had on their cap a year ago, especially. And now they freed up as much cap space almost as any team in the league. And then you spend it all on Kirk Cousins. Before I get to you, Mark, I do want to mention what the money is. It's essentially Daniel Jones's contract, which makes Falcons fans, I would think, feel better. That it's like a 2-year, $90 million contract or $100 million contract with $10 million more in year 3. That will be a penalty, essentially. If they want to give up on Kirk Cousins in year 3, they got to give up $10 million. But teams have shown they're more than willing to do that. They've done that more. So it's basically a 2-year contract with a salary cap inflation bump from what Daniel Jones made. And that's not bad. Then again, there's such little gap between the Daniel Joneses and the Kirk Cousins and the Mahomes and the Lamar Jacksons of the world in terms of one makes 45, one makes 51 or whatever it is, that it's a nice value when you have the really, really great ones. And Kirk Cousins, I would not put in that category.
I guess so. When you say like they, like it's a different coaching staff, and they are trying to keep their jobs, and like the last they lost their job because of poor quarterback play. And it's like you got two options in today's NFL. Like you go get the best quarterback you can find, or you don't. And we just saw the Falcons team that chose to not for 2 or 3 years in a row. And it's like this was the best option. It comes with some risk. You could also argue that Kirk Cousins was already surrounded by a ton of talent in Minnesota, especially the wide receiver position. So it's not like he's going from rags to riches. But if you're the Falcons, it's like this was the prize. You don't go get Gardner Minshew, you go get Kirk Cousins, and it's like, and you ride with it. And I think if you're a Falcons fan, you can say like our team is at least they're swinging for the fences, and we'll see how it goes.
And congratulations to the Atlanta Falcons, because I know one thing you've been thinking about this, probably immediately what came to mind, and it is true. Listeners, I do now take your team seriously. So congratulations to the Atlanta Falcons. The Zuzzer's in on a Falcons run in 24. Speaking of Gardner Minshew, some breaking news. This will not be the first time you hear the breaking news drop. It is, after all, a free agent frenzy. Ian Rappaport reporting that the Raiders have agreed to terms with quarterback Gardner Minshew on a 2-year deal. He'll compete with Aiden O'Connell. That doesn't blow my socks off, but I mean, I'm trying to process this. I was thinking because Justin Fields is still out there and his market continues to shrink. And I thought maybe Fields in Vegas had some, and I feel like Antonio Pierce would be able to ride with that. This one doesn't do as much for me, but it brings another body in there.
I mean, I guess it's smart of Gardner Minshew to sign right after we start taping, because if this had been like 30 minutes ago, he would be buried down in like, 45 minutes in. But now he gets
Here's
to
the
add
money,
one.
by the way. Here's
he gets
the money.
to jump all the way to the top.
Yeah, here's the money, by the way, which can tell you about where they kind of want him to be on the roster. 2-year, $25 million deal includes $15 million fully guaranteed. So that tells me that, there's your starting quarterback for the Raiders in 2024.
I'm surprised. Like, I mean, by the way, just to let you know from a showman angle, I mentioned Gardner Minshew, anecdotally because I saw it in the chat and I thought we could, and you went right off that perfectly. But I would say,
even better as a showman would not.
Yeah,
say
like
that,
don't mention that.
No, we on this show when we
showman points.
No, on this show when you do something of that ilk, you mention it. That's how it works. But like, we're killing other teams for settling on mid-tier quarterbacks, and I like Minshew as a plug and play guy in a pinch, but not as like it's gonna be March and we decide he's our starter right now. Like, where's the draft situation?
No,
I think they can still draft someone.
Dan, I disagree, though, that this deal says he's a week 1 starter or a starter at all. If that guaranteed money is over 2 years, that's like backup money or bridge starter money. It shows that like him and Aiden O'Connell are probably competing, but it's very possible that they add a rookie to that mix too. And then once you get to next year, it'd be even more likely than not that Minshew is the backup.
What did Baker sign for last year?
1 year, $3 million. I get it, but
this is $15 million fully. I think that this is I don't know. We'll see. We're gonna find out. But
I think it's bad news for Aiden O'Connell, and it's like
that tells
I can't
me
believe
that they're serious about him as a starter potentially.
I
I agree that
they wouldn't
he's
draft
certainly the
someone,
favorite.
though.
He's certainly the favorite, but it's a nice threading the needle. I don't think it's that much. Where it's it's $12.5 million per year, so it's above the high end backup money, but it's way below the low end starter money for the Raiders. So I think it's fine. They targeted him, and look, I'd rather pay him $12 million than Baker 40. Like, no question. If we're gonna kill the Baker deal for being a little too much, like this makes more sense if you're in the middle. And you raise a good point on Fields, and we'll get to the other teams today, but there's been nothing on Fields, and there are just not a lot of places out there. And I've been personally, as a Patriot, like if you want me to get back into the Patriots, give me Drake May at 3 and Fields in a trade and just see what happens.
Sure. I'm with that. I mean, the Fields, one thing that surprised me so far about this offseason is that I really did think the Bears had some leverage with Fields, that, even if they decided to go with the quarterback in the draft, which is obviously probably how this is going to play out, that they would get some value back. It's looking increasingly, like the Fields market is just not much of one at all. Let's stick with the quarterback since we're on a roll here with them. because we can't delay any longer because welcome to the Rust Belt. Russell Wilson is also off the board. He over in the middle of the night. We were out and about here in Austin, Texas. We're here for the iHeart Awards, and Rust Belt is a thing in Pittsburgh because he signs a very low money deal with the Steelers. And, we talked about Pittsburgh with the idea that they might not be sitting on their hands here at quarterback, even though they were saying outwardly at the combine and before that they were happy with their QB room. Here comes Russell Wilson, Mark, who is a depreciated asset. But again, and you were just talking about it, Greg, about Minshew. With the money, what you get for the player, this is a signing of Russell Wilson where Pittsburgh it's less than $2 million that they're paying. It's still Denver on the hook for his massive salary. So I think it's an upgrade. Is it a progress stopper? That's where it becomes a conversation, I think.
I don't have a problem financially with taking a shot at him. I think actually that's sort of a smart move for a team that needs to upgrade at quarterback. Like if you remove the Russell Wilson experience out of it, I guess for me, just sort of ruminating on this situation, because again, I think it's like he's more productive than I think people think over the last year plus, where it's like people have written him off entirely, and he can still play. I would believe in an Arthur Smith run heavy attack. I don't hate it, but I would say this: like I cannot pick a team out of 32 NFL teams where I would say Russell Wilson fits less with my life experience of that team. Everything I think about the Pittsburgh Steelers and everything I think about Russell Wilson, it is like two magnets on your fridge that you try to like press together and they rub against each other and they don't want to meet. It's like, I just don't see it. It's interesting, but to me, it's a very odd fit. And I think fit matters in the NFL because I think Russell Wilson like announced it on his Instagram with a totally Russell Wilson like announcement. And it's just like not how I think about what the Pittsburgh Steelers have done for the last 50 years of my life.
Right, because that announcement is kind of like hey, Russell Wilson's coming to town. But Russell Wilson has to make the team. I don't consider that a total guarantee. Russell Wilson has to win the starting job. I don't consider that a total guarantee. When a team invests, everyone's looking at it like, hey, they're not giving up anything. It's worth a shot. Okay, sure. It also means they're not trying harder at the quarterback position. But it also means that they have nothing invested in Russell Wilson. And if he shows up to camp and Kenny Pickett, who all those Steelers fans were so excited about after last year and he finished his rookie season strong, fits a little better in the Arthur Smith system.
It wasn't just Steelers fans, by the way.
Fair. I was never big on Kenny Pickett. It was a wait and see on how he finished that year. But he could improve. Like he could show up and be a better, different player, and he could win that job. I think he'd have a chance. Or door number 3, they have room here to add another player, whether it's a rookie or someone else to the mix, like Mason Rudolph coming back. Like even that wouldn't shock me. They can do that because they didn't really give up anything for Russell Wilson. So I hesitate to just assume that he's the guy. He's the favorite. He's the most likely guy to start. But Arthur Smith's offense is all about like play action, middle of the field, like back to the like Russell Wilson stinks at all that stuff. So I don't know. I guess I got to see it first.
I disagree. I think this is their quarterback. And if you look at some of he also is.
He's the favorite, but I don't assume he might just be washed.
I just think he's the guy. I think they brought him in, and it's in line kind of with their recent philosophy about the quarterback position and what maybe some of the things you're talking about with the offense he doesn't do well, but they also has some talented receivers, and he could still throw a good deep ball, and they're going to run the ball a lot. I actually, what you're saying, Mark, I'm curious kind of what you meant by it, because for some reason, like Wilson and the Steelers kind of works for me in my brain. Like I don't know why. It does. The magnets do connect for me on this. And I don't know if he's going to be successful, but again, like he is almost like Baker this year, where the Steelers are getting this depreciated asset for almost nothing. And, even if he's a league average quarterback, then it's a huge win, at least in terms of roster building, because of the money.
Yeah, so like I said, like from a football angle and from a financial angle, I think it's a smart football move for any team in the league. And I do think has a chance to surprise people. I don't think they would have done this if Arthur Smith also didn't sign off. And we've seen Arthur Smith take quarterbacks, Ryan Tannehill, who were thrown into a scrap heap and reclamate their career. So from that angle, I don't have a problem. I guess it's just aesthetics. Like it's like looking at a painting. We could see it differently. Like my experience of the Pittsburgh Steelers and what I think about Russell Wilson, like they don't match, but like prove me wrong. I'm not saying I'm right about that. It's an odd fit. Like I could think of him going to 5 or 6 other places. The Steelers to me are just like they've always been something different. I'm
because
What do you mean though? I'm
fan.
sorry. What do you mean by
like
that?
me? Like because he's sort of all about himself.
Yeah,
and
because I
they're
think like
this
this.
blue
I think it's
collar
also
thing.
like this is like a Mike Tomlin, hard-nosed defensive team where like the quarterback was Big Ben for 20 years. It's like something about Russell Wilson is a bit of a creation to me, and I can't separate the quarterback from like the whole Russell Wilson Broncos and like marketing campaign, and he was like in the entourage of the movie. It's like it's not what I think of like a Steelers quarterback. And you know what? I don't have I may not. We could probably talk about it for 2 hours. I may not convince you of this. It's just the way that like a player and a team would not fit to a sports fan. I find it to be like the odd. It's not the fit that I would have picked.
You don't have to
ago.
convince me. I was just more curious what you meant.
It just strikes me as like
I don't think they'll like
I'm kind
him.
of surprised Mike Tomlin did it. To be honest,
I think
it
my
doesn't
biggest-
seem like a Mike Tomlin guy.
What I do agree with, what I think maybe it was you that said last week or earlier this week, was that he doesn't seem like a guy that would handle being the number 2 very well. But I don't think that's what he's there to do. Because but if he is someone that's going to get supplanted, you even mentioned, Greg, he might not make the team. We're kind of in different places on Wilson, and maybe that's why I was saying it last night in the cab, like. Wilson is such great catnip for like podcasters and people talking football because he creates so many different like conversation points even as his play has come down.
Yeah, to be clear, like I think the most likely outcome is he's their week 1 starter, but he's a 36-year-old entering a new system, and we've just seen this enough that there are many potential outcomes, and the fact that they have nothing invested in, financially in him. To me, and the fact that he might be like a bad backup and maybe there's too much, like suggests to me like there's a chance here that it just goes poorly. Then, on the other hand, like he is the most Big Ben like quarterback in the entire NFL. They're both divas in totally different ways. They're both very tough physically. They both have been knocked for being maybe like a little limited in terms of like reading the defenses early in their career, but they can make some plays. So who knows? Maybe he's the like 36-year-old version of Big Ben, which was, by the way, still pretty good.
We can agree on one thing though, Dan. That I
Yes.
think that like in that cab or late at night, you coined this the Rust Belt, lexicon, this tag, and I think it's gonna. I think it's gonna grow.
Well,
I think it's gonna grow.
I don't know if we want to, the curtain on that one, if we want to pull it back or not. But as people know, Mark has retired from Twitter abruptly with a flaming screed against the analytics community, and then a sign off and a wishing well of all of us. Doesn't mean Mark's out of the business as a guy that can punch up some scripts. Just leave it at that.
Well,
Leave it at
I think we're hoping the Russell Wilson era, just for content, just has like a little more pop than the Rust Belt tweet got, because we had very high hopes. We had high hopes what kind of numbers it would do. Dan even added at Steelers at NFL.
That's called tagging,
and yeah.
and that typically leads to further engagement.
Yeah.
I was also catching some flack in the. Are you able to pull up this tweet by any chance, Eric Roberts, on short notice? I was also catching some flack about the photo that I chose, which.
Well, as
what
you
needs
should.
to be understood, we're in a Uber going from one establishment to another last night, and the news breaks, and the idea is, in the car, I'm not going to say where it came from because certain members of our podcast do not tweet anymore, but someone had mentioned, oh man, Rust Belt, and Rust Belt, do your research on the region in Western PA, and at that point, I'm scrambling. I'm like, I got to get this up. We got to beat to market the competition, Rust Belt, as a catchphrase. So I pulled up the first photo, but I'm being told that the photo wasn't good enough, but the engagement's okay.
A little fuzzy in the Broncos thing. Yeah, you can watch it on the YouTube now.
I think you were told by our actual like social team that wanted to, elevate it and said you've picked the wrong photo.
Not bad engagement, over 70,000 impressions.
It's catchy. It'll be. I think it could take time, but I like I said then, I think it's possible Al Michaels will be welcoming us to Thursday Night Football in Week 8. Welcome to the Rust Belt, and it's like really caught on.
Did you know that Russell Wilson? I was reading Barnwell today, as everyone must, ranked 21st in QBR last season, which was one spot behind Joe Burrow. Wasn't that bad last year. I mean,
wait, 21st is bad though. Like,
go check where Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph and every other jabroni playing in Pittsburgh was last year.
You don't want to look at Mason Rudolph because he'll look like he's Joe Montana. I mean, his numbers.
There's also like a couple incredible numbers about his season because like we've argued about like his numbers look good if you just like looked at a box, if you landed on Earth and looked at his box score, but for the year, but like 62% of his passes came within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. That's right. He doesn't get Warner offense.
Sean
right there,
Payton coming with him.
All right, we're just getting started here. By the way, I have NFL Plus up on the secondary screen to be ready with any breaking news. But let's take a break. So quarterback news done. We're gonna dig into the running back rooms of teams. And next, and it is interesting there because there's some big names, not a hot draft class. So stay right there, and we're gonna get into it. All right, we are back. Let's get to the running back situation. Like I said, a lot of big names out there, and I guess with some surprise, a lot of them came flying off the board on the first day of the legal tampering period. Let's start with Saquon Barkley, who goes from the New York Giants to the Philadelphia Eagles. And I could tell you as someone who has a lot of friends who are Giants fans, this one hurt. Saquon from the Giants to the rival Eagles, stays in the division, $26 million guaranteed on a 3-year, $37 million contract. So the Eagles had a big day in general, but let's start with Saquon, who goes there, gets nice money.
I love that the kind of analytically driven Eagles, maybe the team that's most associated with the numbers over the last 10 years, are the team that gives Saquon Barkley the contract, because that's the thing with Moneyball. It's all just about like what the markets are saying. At a certain point, running backs have become so devalued that now it's come back around, and a guy like Saquon Barkley actually is worth quite a bit. If you compare his salary, for instance, versus like Gabe Davis today, you could make an argument I'd rather have Gabe Davis. I think the Eagles rightly made an argument. This is a guy who can play all 3 downs for us and supercharge a running attack that already was great to like a totally different level. And they didn't I know it sounds like it's a lot of money, but it's really not much more than the types of offers I think the Giants were giving him over the last couple of years that he just didn't want, I think, from the New York Giants, which is crazy. He's getting in a better situation, certainly a better offensive line, but he basically only got 2 years guaranteed, and it makes this offense crazy. Like, look for explosive, difference-making ability at any position, and don't close your eyes to it just because you're the Eagles and you're not supposed to like high-paid running backs.
Totally agree. I think if you're right now listening to WFAN out in the tri-state area, this is psychological warfare, because this is a team, the Eagles, that stole James Bradberry away from the Giants when they couldn't figure out what to do with James Bradberry. And the Giants for 600 days couldn't figure out how to solve their issues with Saquon Barkley. Last year, they franchised him. The season's a completely lost cause. The Giants look directionless right now. The Eagles swoop in, take the star running back away from New York, and they play them twice a year. This is juicy. Like, this is the kind of stuff when I tend to think that maybe the NFL is like just a deeply scripted operation that is basically a chapter by chapter drama. Like, this fits right in, because
perfect.
Now the Eagles have taken Saquon Barkley away from the Giants. I can see them playing each other in week 1, and it's everything you'd ever want from the NFC East.
Revenge game.
I love that for the Eagles.
Yeah, that's true, Greg. The Eagles also take another player from New York, Bryce Huff of the Jets, goes to the Eagles on a 3-year deal, and he gets good money too, Greg. So that, we talked about Huff, who has incredible pass rush production. He led the Jets with 10.5 sacks, and that despite being a part-time player. I think he played about 42% of the snaps. So the Eagles projected that he can play more than that they, for the money that they're paying and some other moves that they're making on their defense, they're going to have a role for him, and we'll see if they try to turn him into the player the Jets didn't quite think he was. But as a Jets fan, you're afraid you let a star out the door.
Yeah, $50 million over 3 years. Like, he's not a run stopper. I think in their defense, they're not going to really worry about that much. They don't. He reminds me a lot of Hassan Reddick, which makes me think Hassan Reddick is not going to be on the Eagles. Both him and Josh Sweat have been reportedly on the trade block, and you figure one, if not both of them, are going to get dealt. And to me, he's the more one-to-one comparison with Reddick, just a guy who, younger in his career, maybe didn't take advantage. And the Eagles have a good history of doing this, finding these guys who have just pure pass rush and getting great production out of them. I mean, we said it coming into the week, they're not going to be done yet. They also gave Landon Dickerson $87 million, including $50 million guaranteed. Their guard, like, that's a contract actually that I think he'll see the whole deal, but he's one of the best guards in the NFL, getting $20 million a year. And like, you think about that offense with Saquon too, like, that's a fantasy football offense.
I love the Reddick
AJ
comparison.
Brown, like Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and Barkley, and they just want their defense to be good enough, I think, is the idea.
I think the Reddick comparison is right on, because there's numbers that came out after the signing where, like, Reddick played 400 more snaps than Huff, 11 sacks for Reddick, 10 for Huff, 13 tackles for loss for Reddick, 10 for Huff. It's like the Eagles a week ago looked like a malign team, a bit of a talking point, and it's like they always find a way in the offseason to figure it out. And I think they found this one player that we've all looked at. It's like, if you can turn Huff into like a full-time devastator, you've done something that, not that the Jets couldn't do, but they didn't do last year. And you've taken something away from the Jets.
So the Jets, they made this. They never seriously negotiated with him. So this I think goes back a lot to their move to take Will McDonald 15th overall last year. And sometimes you could box yourself in with some of your decisions, because you have Huff, who's a homegrown guy, who's an undrafted player, and you turn him into a guy that was, a real breakout player, and you let him go in free agency because you have so much invested now as a draft pick in Will McDonald. I wonder if they could do it all over again, and if they knew that Huff was going to make the leap that he made this year, if they would have made a different move in last year's draft. What else?
I've noticed that we in these hotel rooms, we each have the same painting on the wall, which is, I'd say, slightly uncreative on behalf of the hotel. It's a nice hotel, not complaining about the hotel, but could have done a little more there.
Yeah. Well, they also didn't expect three bozos to be recording and showing the three hotel rooms.
Yeah, we've unmasked them.
One more point. You're not going to get me, because I know the Eagles will now have an amazing draft because, Howie's the man. Everything else is still, that was a problem at the end of the year. The head coach is still there. The quarterback is still there, and I know he's very talented, but the locker room seemed like a mess, and he played a role in that as well, in my opinion. A.J. Brown right now is still there, and he was moping by the end of the year. I'm just saying, like, before we look at them as an all-star team, remember, this was a team that was in chaos by the end of last year, and they didn't exactly clean house. And in fact, they've lost, in the center, Kelsey. We also had a retirement of Fletcher Cox, some leaders out the door. So to me, there's still a little wait and see how next season begins. I just want to add that as a
No, I think
rejoinder.
That's fair. But you know what I like is they deliver. Like, the free agency year starts and it's like, hey, we're gonna sign the guy, the hot shot pass rusher that we're gonna take a big chance on. Hey, we're gonna sign Saquon Barkley. We'll keep our own guy and Landon Dickerson to it. Like, we'll bring back Brandon Graham. It's like they're always doing stuff, and that's, to me, that's
Howie motherfucker.
That's fair. The Packers are doing stuff too. So Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon have been their combo the last few years. It's a good has been a good combo. Now, that slowed down a little bit last year. Dillon wasn't quite where he was, and he's walking as a free agent. Aaron Jones is still a productive player, but injuries have been an issue for him, and he missed a lot of last year. So the Packers, having some extra money to spend now that they have a quarterback on a rookie contract in Jordan Love, decide to go get Josh Jacobs. So the Raiders, who had made an effort to keep their running back and the rushing champion last year, ultimately, though, the Packers went harder for him, and they land Jacobs, and in a corresponding move, they release Aaron Jones. So now they essentially swap out, as I kind of alluded to at the beginning of the show. They swap out Jones for Jacobs. I don't know if it makes them a better team, to be quite honest with you, but they do. So, good luck to them.
I don't know. I think like Jacobs is, when you get the good version of Jacobs, a violent, easy to watch runner. And if you get that version in Green Bay, that fits very well. Aaron Jones was incredibly important to them when he was on the field last year. And I'm kind of with you, Dan. Like it's not that it's apples for apples, but a healthy Aaron Jones, personally, I would take over Jacobs, but that's just me. Greg, maybe you totally disagree. I don't know.
No, actually, I agree with you. I think he's getting up there. He's 29. He hasn't been able to stay on the field as much. That's been a little bit of an issue for Jacobs too, who's like 1 year on, 1 year off. I think all things being equal, Aaron Jones is better. I think they went into the day and even signing Jacobs with the possibility that they'd have them both, but he was paid so much money, Aaron Jones, that I think they just felt that was out of bounds. And they had a number where they said, like, if you take a pay cut down to $8 million, I'm just throwing a number out there, then we'll keep you and we'll keep both. And so it wouldn't surprise me if they get in the running back market, whether it's the draft or another free agent, but they just decided he was getting paid too much. And Jacobs is 3 years younger. And so I guess that's a big deal too.
If you get 2022 Josh Jacobs, this deal's going to look amazing.
He's been great every other year, and like kind of curious the other years in the.
You mean like
career.
every other year?
Yes.
Alternative.
So now
years,
this is supposed to be this should be a good year for Josh Jacobs. So they're time.
Seems if that's what they were using internally as their compass on this, I'm concerned about the Packers. They also, speaking of the Giants fans in the dumps, Xavier McKinney, the safety, he lands with the Packers on a 4-year, $68 million deal. Woo! So that's a lot of money. It's a lot of scratch, a lot of guap for McKinney, but that's a defense in post Joe Barry world that needed some reinforcements in the back end, and McKinney can deliver that.
We just talked to Mina, and she talked about the fact that like the Packers, and we all agree that it seems like for ages they threw a ton of money and draft picks at safety, and it kind of never worked. And like he's only 24 years old. Like, and I thought this was a player the Giants in another universe might have franchise tagged when they didn't tag Saquon, and they didn't, and they've lost 2 players, and I think the Packers like added a piece to their defense, someone who can be around for a long time based on his age and his skill.
I loved McKinney. I had him really high in the top 101, and he got paid because multiple teams were after him. I forget who the third team was, but I know the Eagles were in on him. There was even a report earlier in the day that they were going to close that deal, and so that market went like very high for Xavier McKinney. But he is a good young player. In that defense, and that secondary has been a nightmare.
All right, here are the other running back deals that have gone down. DeAndre Swift. So the Eagles decide to get Barkley. So Swift goes out the door, and he lands with the Bears. So he had a nice season, I thought, after leaving Detroit, and now Chicago, as they retool their offense, most likely with a new quarterback as well. They add a playmaker and a guy that can make plays as a rusher and receiver. The Titans, they bring in former Cowboys running back Tony Pollard. So Pollard coming off a disappointing season in Dallas where he became the bell cow back and it didn't really take. So now he lands with the Titans, and the Titans also needed offensive line help, and they get it in center Lloyd Cushenberry, formerly of the Broncos. So they get a new running back and a new center. And by the way, if Pollard is their running back now, that means Derrick Henry is, which we kind of expected, is going somewhere else. And now it's just we're waiting to see. I have a really strong feeling about where he's going to land. Maybe at the end of the show, we'll each share a prediction going into day 2 ahead of the new league year. Gus Edwards lands with the Chargers, and the Giants, by the way, do sign Devin Singletary, according to reports. So that's a slew of running back moves. You guys got anything?
Yeah, Pollard and Tajay Spears is a fun backfield. I think people were a little hard on Pollard coming off of a broken ankle, but I also think that they view Pollard as a 1B and Tajay Spears is probably their 1A, and that I'm just a little surprised how quickly all these guys came off the market. But then when people were getting all excited, be like, oh, the running back market is back. Like, it's a real thing. It's like, okay, they're getting paid like the same as a fairly low-level guard, or about half as much as like a slightly above average guards, and they're getting paid the same as like defensive, but
They've
rotational.
been
defensive
prioritized
linemen.
on the beginning,
Yes.
first day of free agency,
So,
which is kind of different than past.
It is, and they're making more money than they were a year or 2 ago. To be clear, DeAndre Swift, people will probably forget this the minute this happens, but he will always be the first player signed during the legal tampering period. So congratulations to DeAndre Swift and the Chicago Bears.
I feel like
it's
we
like
used
a
to do sandwiches on that. We used
Yes,
to
we
make
did.
predictions, which is one of the dumber things because it's not, we don't have an official timestamp on these things, but fun.
I watch this running back market, and for me, it's the holes it creates. And Dan, I won't steal your thunder about the Derrick Henry landing spot, but there are a couple teams out there that have like absolute nothingness at running back right now after these moves. And I still think Derrick Henry is the best back of every one of these players. I like him more than Saquon. I like him more than Josh Jacobs. I like him more than Aaron Jones. I just do. I know I get the age, I get the mileage, but it's like I cannot wait to see where he lands. I think he's going to be also quite agitated with the fact that he's like the 8th running back to go off the board here. He's going to devastate someone and destroy someone come September.
It's also funny that the Harbaughs are now sharing players. They share coaches, but like Gus Edwards, the first thing he does is go from John to Jim Harbaugh because Greg Roman is over there. And it's bizarre that that's the move the Chargers made today. I do think we're going to get some trades as we talked about, but that'll be later in the week.
I'm not going to hit the breaking news on this, but the Giants and their fans could use some good news. There's something floating out there right now, but let's wait until we hear it from our guys. In other news, so we mentioned that the Raiders go and they get Gardner Minshew, and we'll see where he fits at the end of the day in their quarterback room. But they make a huge move, Mark, on their defensive line, adding Christian Wilkins, formerly of the Dolphins, for $110 million, almost 85 of that guaranteed. A lot of guaranteed money being doled out to these big time players. So this is a huge move for the Raiders, a team that seems to be acting, and what you hear from the coach who's doing a lot of talking is like they think they're closer than other people might think. But there's no denying that Wilkins is a big time talent in the middle, is going to tag team with Max Crosby on one of the best combos of any team up front in the league.
Yeah, I mean, Max Crosby having to do it alone, not unlike a Myles Garrett in years past before this past season in Cleveland, still wrecking people. And the idea of Wilkins and Max Crosby together gives you, if you're Antonio Pierce, an identity. And I think that that's a defensive coach. The Raiders defense, you've got to plan for Wilkins. I think if you want to find a player like him, you would have had to use your first round pick to get a player like him. I'm not even sure there's a player in the draft like him. You might have to go years till you find someone like him. So the money's worth it. These are rare players. And I think for me, I know even in the last couple of weeks, I've been killing the idea of like a Chris Jones going to a lost team where we just don't hear from him again for 4 years. That feels like the Raiders feel like that kind of team to me, but that's just bias. Like I actually think that the Raiders made an aggressive move here, and either you do or you don't. Like whoever got Christian Wilkins, their defense becomes a completely different operation.
I mean, he owes the Dolphins on some level for letting him go in free agency. He got $84.5 million guaranteed, and the Dolphins could have kept him for 1 year, $20 million. So like that changed his life. They have I don't know what the word is, like the most starting, we'll have to beat that out, like defensive line in the league by far. Like, because who annoys offensive linemen more than Christian Wilkins? Like he gets in fights. Like everyone like thinks he's sort of on the edge or over the edge, and putting him next to Max Crosby, that's just like kind of an insane duo. They also, both of them never leave the field. Like Christian Wilkins is almost the defensive tackle version of Max Crosby. You can't stay on the field every snap if you're a defensive tackle, but he's pretty close to that. I also like Malcolm Kuntz there at the end of last season. So that's 3 guys like the Raiders doing something. I like it. That's the most, by the way, anyone's going to make, I think, in free agency other than Kirk Cousins. It's going to be Christian Wilkins. We'll go down. That used to be a sandwich prop we used to make too. Kirk Cousins, I guess, would have won it, but Wilkins will be second.
The Vikings. So we mentioned Kirk Cousins is no longer their quarterback, and that leaves a gaping void for that team. But there's still other work to be done. And Jonathan Grenard, there's a nice piece of the puzzle for them. Pass rusher, he goes to the Vikings for $42 million, guaranteed 4 for 76. Blake Cashman, the veteran linebacker, also to Minnesota on a 3-year deal. So that defense definitely needed some enforcements. So on that side of the ball, it's been a good day in Minnesota.
Yeah, I think he was, like, again, a guy who kind of was helped out by his team, which is maybe a red flag. I don't know, because Houston was not in any cap struggles. They just decided, like, we we don't want to invest that much in Jonathan Grenard. But in terms of like pressures and his age and pass rush win rate and everything you would want, like he is a 1-for-1 replacement for Danielle Hunter, who is still out there. I think he's the top player left on my top 101. I did a quick check before we started. I think 20 players that entered the day on the top 101 have been signed, but that's it. That means 80 are still out there, but 25, 30 more were already taken off the board like before it even happened as that list kept changing. But that's a nice move. But it showed me like the Vikings knew they weren't getting Kirk Cousins because this move happened right off the bat. This was one of the very first moves of free agency was them making sure that they got Jonathan Grenard.
I mean, even their decision, and you know, the GM put out a statement, like you said, and the decision that they made before last season when they decided to break off the extension talks. It seemed like the writing was on the wall, and they want to build this a different way. You can't really hate on them because when you look at what he actually did, Cousins, despite all the production, they never really got close. And now that it's time to change things up. So I understand that it does. I do have to say, I mean, I will say it. You know, I've been waiting, you know, this moment for Sam Darnold. Like, you keep on hearing whispers about Darnold and the Vikings. I've been waiting for this guy to get a fair shot at a reboot, a proper reboot, since his Jets fiasco career, and that would work. That give me Darnold as the QB with Kevin O'Connell, and have Justin Jefferson. Hopefully they'll get under contract. Then you guys, if he bombs out of there, you guys can bury me for it and laugh at me. But I think that would be a nice setup for him to potentially have his own type of Baker renaissance.
They also have the 11th pick. They could move up. Someone like J.J. McCarthy. I mean, I think they have.
Or trade with the Patriots. Some people think they might trade up with the Patriots all the way to 3 and take one of the top guys.
Right. There just has to be another. There has to be another move. Like, but Dan, like honestly, if the whole master plan here in 2 offseason rebuild was to get Sam Darnold, like you could have gotten Sam Darnold.
It's a transition year for them. So if you go and get a guy on the cheap, and maybe it works.
I don't know how many transition years you get in a row. It's like they sold players for on the cheap last year. And I know they
won 13 games in what was supposed to be a transition year, and then this truly was, and they were kind of peaking at the moment that Cousins got hurt. Yeah, I think it was absolutely the right time to say goodbye. You got to make tough decisions sometimes, and I think Kwesi made it at the right time. I think the injury ended up making it a lot easier for them to do that, and I actually do think Darnold would make sense there. But that is the ultimate team of Zeus TL. I mean, forget. We're not doing the Vikings ever again, but
never
again.
And
Dan is the most
something to think about.
Loyal to his team of any person I know. But if there was ever going to be a strong number 2 for Dan, it is Sam Darnold starting for the freaking Vikings, who you always like for some reason. I don't really know why.
As everyone knows, the Jets are testing my patience like never before, and if that becomes very interesting to me. Like my 50% G, my buddy Greg, who was at the Super Bowl this year, is a diehard Vikings fan. So I would even have like a buddy that I could, connect with on it. It's let's just leave it out there and let it hang.
They also signed Blake Cashman to a $26 million deal, a linebacker who I think Mina mentioned as one of her favorites. And they're definitely signing sort of like the hipster football Twitter favorites in Grenard and Cashman. So you got that group.
You know who else said it other than
Darnold
Mina?
would be there too, right? Ooh.
I said it. I said Blake Cashman.
You said it. You said it.
Oh, you said
that.
Yeah.
I mean,
you said that he was one of your favorite guys in free agency.
No, I said that I mentioned that in the news when we set up this Vikings conversation.
But Dan, our list is still coming out, so I mean, he's not going to be on our list.
It's coming out.
Yeah,
tomorrow at midnight.
So we have a lot, more news to get to and everything. But are you guys a little feeling like you're getting caught with your pants down? That all these free agents, I mean, we are literally reporting on the biggest names of free agency signing. Your list isn't even out.
Our pants
you
are
like NFL Network the first year that they did the legal tampering period and didn't realize the big day was going to be Wednesday and not Monday. And on Monday, they only had like 2 people on air for 4 hours. And they were like, humana. We didn't know this was going to be the big day.
Well,
the answer is no.
Greg.
Yeah.
Yeah, we feel totally confident about
our operation.
Bozo. It's coming out when it needs to come out at the proper time.
It's coming out when it comes out, which is on the eve of the new league year.
That's
213
It's up for the readers to decide what they prefer.
All right. And yeah, I know everybody, and I see it in my mentions. People don't want to hear about Dan's always on about Darnold. It's true. I'm so happy. It's finally like felt like I was seeing Mina Kimes, who everyone respects Mina Kimes' opinion. I'm not alone on this.
No,
I'm
that's
alone
part
on
of
the
the
show.
annoyance. There's a lot of Darnold love out there in the football.
And remember, I was driving that. If it ever turned out into something, just remember before everyone else found it fashionable.
Dan, why would we have to remember when we will be reminded every single show about it?
Like,
I know you don't want this to happen because
it's not that I don't, but it's like. Well, we're not going down.
I mean, Jeremiah had him number one with like a bullet in a class with Josh Allen and Lamar. Like there's a lot of people that are invested in Sam Darnold.
Give Sam a chance.
All right, let's move
all
on.
we are saying. All right, let's take a break and we'll roll on. All right, welcome back. All right, diving right back in. The Jaguars are active. The Jaguars have had a busy Monday here. They signed wide receiver Gabe Davis, formerly of the Buffalo Bills. 3 years, $39 million, $11 million at signing. Davis, who has had a checkered history in terms of being a productive player, but has always been enticing as a guy that can maybe take the next step. They also get Darnell Savage in the building as well on the other side of the ball. So the Jags, Mark, are busy.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering what the Jags, what their plan was this offseason, and also wondering where Gabe Davis would wind up. I don't hate it. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with Calvin Ridley, but they kind of lack a number one wide receiver to me, because Gabe Davis to me is the quintessential sort of hot and cold guy who he'll go a couple games where you're not sure he was even on the field, but then he'll explode for 142 yards and be a deep threat. So I like it for Trevor Lawrence. They've added to their offensive line as well. It's like you've got to build around him. He's a piece. That's what I'd say about him. He's just a piece. It takes away from the Bills. I don't know what the Bills are doing, because it seems like every couple of minutes, like the Bills, something is being taken away from Buffalo.
Gabe Davis, I think, has a lot of potential, but the Jaguars have tried this before. They spend a lot of money in free agency at wide receivers to pretty middling results. I'm assuming Calvin Ridley is going to sign elsewhere, or they would not make this deal, because Calvin Ridley is a different type of player, but there's no way they're going to do both. It was not that expensive, though. I mean, he's signing for a little less than, let's say, Juju signed for last year, or Jacoby Myers signed for last year. That's reasonable to me, but this is a boomer bust type of offense. They also signed Mitch Morse from the Bills, and not yet another player from the Bills. So there's a Buffalo to Jackson.
I don't love the signing. It sounds like they're trying to save money because Ridley's market got more expensive than they wanted, to do that type of business. That they were scared off by that. And Davis, if Josh Allen couldn't make him a thing, I know he's kind of a thing.
He was a thing in
a
certain games, though.
I know, that's what I mean, but not a consistent force when he wasn't even seeing the number one cornerback most weeks with Stephon Diggs already there. I don't know. We'll see.
Have you seen the analytics, though, he put out on Instagram? Because they were pretty impressive. I mean,
he put them out on himself?
It actually, yeah, he did. He must have gotten them from his agency or something, but they were so overwhelmingly good that I actually bumped him up the top 101 just for that.
Oh, good. See, it works to promote oneself. By the way, I meant to hit this when we were talking about the running backs, but like I said, this is Insider Christmas. It's a high-pressure business. We have a live program on NFL Network where we have all three of our insiders, and we all know who they are. It's Rap Sheet, it's the Pell Raiser, and Mike G. Okay? And when the Josh Jacobs news comes down, it's on live television. And Jacobs and Ian has it first. And Ian takes out his phone and he kind of pauses and he starts to say it, and then he's texting in real time while he's on live TV, and he says that this is from me. And in the middle box, so it's Siciliano in one box, Andrew, Pellraiser, and then Mike G. You see Pellraiser's face. He's like, give me the credit. Loop me in on the scoop. Ian didn't loop him in. So here was Pellraiser minutes later when there was another bit of news to announce.
That's right. The Rams signing Colby Parkinson, the former Seahawks tight end, to a big deal. 3 years, $22.5 million, including $15.5 million guaranteed, according to me and Ian. See, I'll give Ian credit on TV, and though he stiffed me on Josh Jacobs right there, Parkinson can void that deal.
What a lonely, barren existence.
Whoa.
Not
Bunsen
just
burner
him,
blowtorch.
just the job. It just sounds like it's. Are you ever satisfied? Do you ever go out for dinner and you're not on your phone the entire time? Are you sleeping with your phone next to your face? Like, are you ever a human? Do you ever swim in a lake?
You mentioned Gabe Davis, by the way. Gabe Davis did have 8 catches for 201 yards and 4 touchdowns in that playoff game against the Chiefs a couple of years back. I mean, if there was a star-making performance that you could ever bank on, you would have thought that would have been it. And yet, the Bills felt comfortable letting him go, which I think tells you a lot. And I'm not breaking news here. You hear this all the time. There's a reason why a lot of these signings don't work out. And the reason is a lot of these teams made internal decisions about these players that they weren't somebody they wanted to keep around or not at a certain price point. But the Jags go and get Davis, and we'll see what happens. All right,
they have like a 2 and a 3. Like Kirk makes more money, and he's a 2, and maybe Davis is a 3 or whatever. And for the insiders, I do want to, I guess, give them credit. At some point, I don't know how it worked, but at some point, Rap Sheet and Pellraiser decided like we have to join forces because so many of these reports are the 2 of them. I don't know how did that conversation go? I'd like to know. Why isn't Mike G involved in that thing where they're share because they do share a lot, but they don't share all. Like, what is the decision making process?
I have a theory.
Nobody knows.
Let's
hear the theory.
My theory is that when it comes to scoopage, like you got to have that dog in you.
Mm-hmm.
And Rap Sheet and Pellraiser are both highly competitive, and there had to be some type of brokerage behind the scenes, so neither would get upset with the other. But you still see it bubble up in moments like that on live television where it can't be managed. Mike, on the other hand, I feel like he doesn't have that dog in him as a newsbreaker. Like he can do it, and if he wanted to, he could absolutely be like the other 2. But he chooses a different path in life, and
he wants that dinner. He wants to turn off the phone with his wife and have a nice dinner.
That's what I think. I think.
Well, so when you're 80, what
and
are
I'm
you
not saying good
on?
or bad on anybody involved with
bad.
that, but that's just how I see it.
This is not a comment on any of them, but I would say that Mike Garafolo seems completely secure with whatever role he's chosen.
I also think
completely secure.
It should be said in fairness that I would imagine that Ian and Tom enjoy having dinner with their family too. And
I would say that's
they
probably
enjoy
true.
it.
We're not suggesting that's not the case.
All right. Moving on. The Panthers signed guard Robert Hunt to a 5-year, $100 million deal with $63 million guaranteed. That seems like a lot, but that's the guards are getting paid. Giants signed Andrew Van Ginkel to $20 million over 2 years. That's your boy, Mark. That's your boy.
Yep.
And also guard John Runyon gets $17 million guaranteed. In addition, of course, yes, to Devin Singletary joining the fray at running back.
I love the Hunt signing. I mean, the Panthers, I thought were lost from a front office perspective for years in a row. But he had the lowest pressure rate allowed of any offensive lineman in the league last year. And, that whole offense needs help. I don't love Van Ginkel going to the Giants right now. I mean, I grew up with the Giants, but it's like, I want Van Ginkel plugged into a Super Bowl ready operation where we're watching him in January next season. So
Wait,
let
how
me
big
see
a
where
Van Ginkel fan are you, Mark? This is
I
really...
think he's one of my favorite players in the league. I've mentioned this, a couple shows
What is
ago.
What is it about Van Ginkel that really
His name
revs your engine, that lights up your Christmas tree?
His name is sort of his whole aura, persona.
He has
like
some
the fact
similarities to previous Mark favorites like Toby Gerhart and whatnot on the defensive side, but there's a
No, that's not
commonality.
where we're going, by the way.
Yikes.
Just like like I said, though, there were how many Dolphins games, especially under Brian Flores, where like suddenly Van Ginkel's having like a crazy second half where he's like blowing people up and making plays. Like he just stands out to me, and it's like, go do it for the Giants.
He is officially your guy.
I like these two
He's
Giants
yours,
moves.
baby.
Giants fans should feel the Singletary contract to me was one of the most mystifying of the entire day. Like I know it'll be backloaded, but like you really didn't have to pay that much money for Devin Singletary. I do like the Van Ginkel signing, and I do like the John Runyon.
Can we let the running backs eat? Can we let one, a couple of these guys
Singletary,
get maybe a slight
overpay?
overpay?
So clearly, like there was like 7 guys that were worth paying available, and he was like the 8th or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, and they. Like, if you're going to pay him that much money, just pay an extra couple million to keep Saquon Barkley. That part I didn't get. But Runyon was at a more fair price. And the Hunt deal, it sounds crazy. Everyone was like, whoa, Robert Hunt. But when they don't put the specifics, they didn't put the guaranteed money in at least in terms of how it was structured. They did say 60. It's the last couple of years are fake. And he's a big-time player, a big-time guard. And guards are getting paid, I think just because so many of them hit the market that are actually quality starters, and there just aren't many positions where like young in prime players hit the market, and there happen to be like 10 guards who are playing at a pretty high level. But like the Dolphins lost so many players today. Maybe this is the time to just mention it. One of the Dolphins beat writers, I think it was Joe Shad, pointed out the Dolphins need right now, after losing all these players today, 2 starting defensive tackles. Of course, they just lost Wilkins. They also lost Van Ginkel. A starting cornerback. They had cut Xavier Howard. A starting safety. Brandon Jones landed in Denver. 2 starting guards. A starting inside linebacker. A starting center. 2 heavy usage edge players, and 3 backup wide receivers. So that's what they think the Dolphins need right now.
They think they're in trouble now. Wait till they give Tua $40 million a year for like 3 years.
Might be partly what they're saving up for. And they will make some signings. It's not like they're just going to like sit out free agency. But
then also Buffalo has had to, I know everyone's like the cap doesn't matter. It doesn't even exist. It's a ghost. But like
is
Buffalo
that Greg? No, Greg says that cap does matter.
No, but
I say it's like
it doesn't matter.
I think either one of them is a little too simplified, but if
I would
had
say
to pick
Buffalo
one,
has had to make some moves because of the cap. They've had to make some moves and lose some players. And it's like a year ago, it was like, will every team in the AFC East make the playoffs? It's like Buffalo is not better right now on any level, and the Dolphins are missing like 12 players. Not good.
Really, you hate to see it. Another move at interior line, Rams sign Jonah Jackson for $34 million guaranteed on a $51 million deal. Was he good last year? Was it like what is that?
He's been very consistent, I would say, throughout his career. He definitely missed some time for Detroit last year, but he's played a lot and always been thought of as a good guard. That price and Kevin Dotson's price for the Rams really surprised me. They got very similar money, but I think they're going to let their center, Coleman Shelton, I'm guessing, leave. And they're going to move their guard last year, who was a rookie, Steve Avila, who looked great, and move him to center. And suddenly you've got, on paper, one of the best interior offensive lines in the league. They must have thought they really hit on something last year with an interior offensive line that was playing well. But that's like their thing. That's what they decided to spend all this cap space on, was interior offensive line. It's pretty interesting.
Well, how about this, Mark? You mentioned the Bills. What are they, are they better? Are they worse? The Dolphins. Well, how about keeping Deion Dawkins in the building? There's some positive news in Buffalo. This was reported first by Schefter that the Bills signed Dawkins to a 3-year, $60.5 million contract extension. And this has been a durable rock on their team. Also, a little bit of a weird kind of story around this one because yesterday, I think it was.
No.
When was it?
This morning.
It was 5 minutes before the new, or like 20 minutes before the news actually came out that he's re-signed with the Bills.
Talk about your all-time shaky bits. 5 minutes before he goes on social media and basically announces his career with Buffalo is over, which I don't know who. I mean, where the laughs are, you're essentially antagonizing and bumming out your fans in Buffalo. And then it turns out, unless there's something more to the story, that was all just an elaborate ruse because then the report comes out that he is staying indeed in Buffalo and will continue to anchor that line. So cool bit, bro.
It's a faulty bit because there's enough players out there on Twitter, making it clear that they're learning news at the same time that civilians are, the same time we are. And like, I guarantee unless he, set up this like faulty bit with everyone on the roster, ahead of time, which seems unlikely because the whole thing was sort of a mess. Like, he's got teammates floating out there thinking that he's leaving the team for a while,
Well,
too.
what about for like 20 minutes? You're right. Daquan Jones actually did respond to his tweet being like, what the heck, man? The tweet that he sent out was, "It was good while it lasted, Buffalo. Peace. Excited for this next chapter of my football career. Wonder if it's okay to eat ranch now." And I think he even did a press conference today, and he just said, "I just woke up and felt like being a troll." You know,
Wow.
He just
Do you ever get it happened to me once, but I think a lot of people can relate to it. You have a buddy who breaks up with his girlfriend, and the girlfriend sucks, and then you kind of share that with them after they break up, and then they get back together.
Oh,
and but you've shared the information, your true feelings. He also risked one of his teammates, like Stephon Diggs, for example, being like, "Whatever, bro, we didn't like you anyway," and that would have made
People
a
love him,
massive
though.
situation.
People love
No,
him.
I'm just saying, like, you
yes.
open the door for that scenario.
Yep. You might not.
You guys
hear,
never
you
had
might
that
not like what you
situation with
hear.
a friend, by the way?
No, you're right. And it reminds me of people that ask you what you think of different possible baby names before they actually name their baby. Don't give an opinion. There's a chance that ends up being their baby's name, and then they will remember that for their child's entire life. And you'll even, you'll know that looking at that child. That
So you did
said
this,
you
Greg.
didn't.
This happened to you. You were
No.
critiqued a baby name.
No, but I do know it was a close friend this happened to.
Tough sitch. Classic all-time tough sitch.
That's like a no-win situation. Oh yeah, I don't like that name. It's like, oh, what did you name your baby? Oh yeah, that name I mentioned before.
Well, also the situation, just a little more context, what gets tricky is when you're having that conversation with your buddy, and of course this can happen with, the fairer sex as well in a reverse scenario. You're trying to cheer him up, and you're trying, because he's down in the dumps about it, and he's like, "I can't believe it didn't work out," and you're like, and you're just trying to make him feel like he didn't lose the greatest thing he ever had. So you're also trying to feed him from that side, and then it all blows up in your face. So just be careful with that. Baby name thing, sure, that as well. Just a lot of minefields out there.
The Bills, by the way, are also bringing back AJ Epinesa, which is breaking right as we're talking. So that's another point in my thing that the cap is real, but teams keep the players.
Point in my thing that the cap is real.
Point in my
Gregg
favor
Rosenthal.
is like, okay, they got rid of all these guys in Buffalo. It's like, oh, this is sad. The cap is very hard. That's all true. Deion Dawkins, who is getting paid a lot of money, but actually still playing at a very high level that they think will continue. They figured out a way to change his contract around, give him even more money because he's playing at such a high level. So if you have players you want to keep, you keep them, like they kept Epinesa too.
I'm Switzerland in the is the cap real or not camp. I just don't give a all right, let's keep moving. Let's keep, because we must. Michael Pittman. This works out for everybody. We didn't need to figure out whether Michael Pittman was really good or not, or worth a lot of money. Just let the Colts keep him, and they seem to like him. So Michael Pittman gets a 3-year, $46 million deal, or a 3-year deal, $46 million of it guaranteed. Where does that stack up, Greggy, in terms of the wide receiver market? Is that tier T, as to use a Steve Smithism, is that tier 2 money, tier 1, low tier 1, or tier 2 money?
Yeah, it's like on that borderline. I think it'll wind up looking like tier 2 money. It's perfect for Michael Pittman. It's like a little more than the franchise tag, but it's not you're the man.
Is Michael Pittman the Dalton line for wide receivers? Like, have as your like number one guy?
For number one, it's a little weird to make number one receivers the Dalton line. But yes, for like a number 1 to number 2 receiver, I think he would be that line.
Wait, do we have a new off-season series? It's time
like,
to
not for
expand the
starters.
Dalton line universe.
Right. To say you're a number 1, then you're like in the top, in theory, 20, 25 in the league, whatever it's going to be. So, yeah.
Sounds like a chore.
But to the point with the Dalton line is that at that point, you don't have a solution as a true playmaker. I don't know, Mark, it's something for you to kind of get working on.
It's too confusing because every team needs 2 to 3 receivers, and he's not the 16th best receiver in the league.
Isn't that where the Jaguars are? They
that.
don't have a number one.
Yes.
There are teams out there like do the Titans do you consider DeAndre Hopkins a number 1 at this point?
Christian Kirk looks more like the Dalton line. Someone
I'm just
like him.
This might be something to chew on. That's all, Mark. Something to chew on.
You want me
I'm
to
not saying
chew
it's
on
a fully formed idea, but something really to get in the lab and try to see if we could make something.
I will
happen.
heavily consider it.
While
Good.
we're on the Colts, they're sort of like, to me, one of the more forgettable teams from the 2023 season. Sorry. I know you were in the mix, but once Richardson was hurt, it was just, to me, they weren't a fun watch. They've
Who are
had
you
the most.
talking to?
The Colts. I'm saying sorry to the Colts.
Oh,
fans.
to the Colts.
Yes.
I think Mark was in on the Colts as well.
They've had the most boring
Wow.
day one of free agency too, which is they just re-signed all their players. They re-signed Tyquan Lewis. They re-signed Grover Stewart to a surprisingly big deal, but I like Grover Stewart, and they re-signed Pittman. So it's just like Chris Ballard is just like, we like our guys. Let's stick with them.
Yeah, and let's
Not
bring
the-
back
not the worst
Richardson,
idea.
and hopefully Richardson's healthy, and maybe we take the leap. They comported themselves with grace and dignity considering the injury, Mark. And
That was
the
my
backup quarterback.
comment, and I thought that their defense was, nasty on a week-to-week basis, and they made the playoffs with a backup quarterback. That
They did
says a
not
lot
make the
about that
playoffs.
team.
They did not make the playoffs, but they were.
They did
about
not
being
make the
edible.
playoffs with a
That
backup.
it felt like the
They
playoffs.
almost
To be
did,
fair,
though.
it was
They
like
almost did.
It was a battle. It was like the play-in game for the NBA, the battle for the 14th seed in the NFL.
which they barely lost. Tough stitch for them, but Gardner
That's
Minshew nearly
sports,
took them
bud.
to the promised
There's
land.
no such thing as barely lost. You either won or you lost.
well,
that's
in this
it.
case, barely.
That's it. All right, we got to take one more break, and then we'll finish the news. All right, we're back. Let's close this out. This is more in the realm of speculation, but keep an eye on it because we've been talking about wide receivers all show, and that market is fast drying up. But there are still teams out there that are desperate to add wide receivers. So T. Higgins, who got tagged by the Bengals, their number 2 guy, that's a good example. T. Higgins is the number 2 on his team, but I think he's almost certainly better than Michael Pittman, right? I think
Yes.
yes,
I
I'd
think
agree.
so that type of thing. So Higgins is that type of guy. So when he looks around at the landscape, he says, "All right, you're going to tag me, but you're not willing to give me the long-term deal. I request a trade." He said he declared it. So we'll see. Did they grant him that request?
Well, he's a franchise tag, so it's kind of funny because he's allowed to.
Well,
get
Snead
traded.
and
He doesn't
Kansas
even
City
need
is
to
the same
get.
thing,
You don't
right?
need to get. You don't need to get permission. I mean, you get it a little early, but any team can sign a franchise tag player. He's unsigned. They just
They have to give
gotta
up a lot, but they could. Yeah.
So it's a
But
little
he has the tag affixed to him, correct?
correct.
But they have to give
Doesn't
up
that
picks.
grant the team that has affixed the tag? Doesn't it preclude that player from being in the mix in free agency with a certain designation?
Well, in theory, teams could sign him to an offer sheet, and they would have to give up 2 first-round picks, which everyone knows is going to be too rich for T. Higgins. So, yes, I guess the Bengals would have to give permission on some level to talk about different trade terms, but we know how this works.
But like
they do
Snead
whatever
with
they want.
Kansas City as another example in this realm, they're on board with this.
Yes.
We don't have any indications that the Bengals are entertaining offers, but he would like to be on the move. It sounds
But the
like.
Chiefs or the Bengals could accept less than the 2 number 1. Like, remember this happened with Jimmy Graham back in the day too. It was like they could, if they really wanted to move Higgins or it became a thing, like you can accept your different terms.
Right, you can do what you want. Matt Castle, I think, was one of those guys back in the day. Knowing the Bengals, they're not gonna. Him like declaring this is only gonna make them be like, "Sorry, bro, we want you for 1 more year." I don't think they're gonna do anything.
This makes them want him more. They're like, "Oh, you really want to go? You're not going anywhere." Eric Armstead, also of the Niners, he is expected to be released by San Francisco, so he'll enter the fray. The Commanders sign, yes. Thoughts?
I think he's in my top 30 of my free agency
Ooh.
list. I was quite surprised. He was still playing pretty well last year. They did sign Leonard Floyd as we were taping to a 2-year, $20 million contract. So they basically decided to get a similar-ish player. I know Floyd's more of an outside guy, but good run stopper, but for much less money than Armstead was making. But a weird move. Weird move.
I'm looking at a name right now that I'm in trouble. I'm going to say it right now. The Commanders signed former Cowboys defensive end Dorrance. This one's not that easy. Dorrance
Armstrong.
$33 million over 3 years, but also center Tyler
Biadasz.
Yeah.
Biadasz.
Biadasz.
There you go.
And as we were
Tyler
taping,
Biadasz. Oh.
as we were taping, also our number one or my number one off-ball linebacker Frankie Louvu to a 3-year, $36 million contract. So they're active, if nothing else. And two of those guys were Dan Quinn's players in Dallas. Armstrong, I thought, is a nice value there. I really liked how he played in
Frankie
Dallas.
Louvu is sort of, for me, like a Van Ginkel type, where it's like I think Frankie Louvu is an excellent addition, big hire. Constantly creating problems.
Why are you making a face?
I don't know. I like Mark's kind of nebulous guys.
I got stuck
see
watching
Louvu's
the
in there now.
Panthers a lot early in the year last year, and I just noted that, like, whenever I was writing my notes for our show, like, Louvu kept just doing things over and over, and I think it's like I don't know. I never trust the Commanders as a landing spot, but I have to remove what's happened the last 20 years up until now. We'll see.
Right. These actually seem like the sort of like mid-wattage, just solid NFL players that are improving and in the middle of their career that you want in free agency, and very uncommanders like. So I think it's a nice day for the Commanders. I really liked Armstrong coming into this whole thing. He was one of my guys that I wanted.
Pinch me Patriots talk. Kendrick Bourne resigns with the Pats, $19 million over 3 years. He's coming off an ACL, so it is an ACL, right? So hopefully he'll be healthy and a contributor. Devontae Parker, another big time move that they made a couple of years back, did not work out, so he's been released. Greg?
I mean, Bill Belichick signing Devontae Parker to another contract last offseason is, one of the more regrettable moves that didn't involve the name Juju Smith-Schuster for the Patriots.
Patriots also added Antonio Gibson.
Oh, yeah. That's kind of fun. I do like
wide
them.
receiver room is pretty rough the last few years in general. Just the decisions and the production and the highlight plays or lack thereof.
It's pretty rough. I do like them as a last second Fields option, although I wouldn't want that to stop them from drafting one. What?
You brought up Belichick. Imagine, Kirk Cousins signed with Bill Belichick's team today. That would have been cool if the Falcons made that move, but maybe Raheem Morris will be better. All right. 8 o'clock delight. Hit it. The Colts signed Zaire Franklin, 3 years, $31 million. The Jags signed former Bill center Mitch Morse, $10 million over 2 years. Graham Glasgow, re-signed by Detroit, $20 million. He gets in that deal. The Bengals bring back tight end Drew Sample on a 3-year contract. The Patriots sign Antonio Gibson, the running back. Cardinals sign cornerback Sean Murphy-Bunting and Bilal Nichols. The Colts hang on to defensive lineman Tyquin Lewis and Grover Stewart. And the Texans sign one-time top 3 pick of the Lions, Jeff Okudah, to a contract. They also bring in former Titan Danico Autry.
Like that Autry move. I like those, Texans seem like they're doing smart things. Very disorienting.
Jeff
I don't know,
Okudah
the Grenard
floating
thing's
from
still,
team to team.
A little weird to me, the Grenard thing, but they must know something that we don't.
Also, if you're a fan and your team didn't make this show, or you're Nick Westling and you're texting us, I mean, what is the Bengals' plans? Like, same old stuff. Just calm down.
Chill.
It's day one of free agency. There's going to be a lot of more stuff that's going to happen.
The Jets signed Greg Zuerlein, but they bring back Greg the Leg. And I think Will Lutz had a change of heart. Should we leave that as a cliffhanger?
Yes.
You're right.
You need to find that out on your own.
The report
Dan,
was he was going to go to Jacksonville, and Sean Payton would not let his man go, and he brought him back to Denver.
Dan, you were going to give us your Derrick Henry fantasy.
Oh, why don't we
scenario.
do it when I say I'll go 1, 2, 3, go, and then we'll all say where we think is the perfect landing spot for Derrick Henry.
Okay.
Well,
Okay. All right, Greg, sit it out because you can't go along with anything. All right, me and you, Mark,
I'm just
ready?
trying to think of something.
1, 2, 3, go.
Ravens.
Yeah, it just makes so much sense.
It does. It does.
Can't you? You were talking about Big Ben. You were struggling with him in Pittsburgh. Like, God, you could pour him into that Ravens purple, and it just
Today.
And you could see him running in January and finally getting him over the hump and closing out some ball games.
And
Make
it's
it happen.
Baltimore's the perfect place to pick up a veteran that's apparently everyone else, including the smart Titans, have decided we're done with this guy. And he rolls into a Baltimore operation that probably goes 2 playoff games deep because of him. I love the fit. You could see it today, and he would destroy people left and right post-November.
And you kind of alluded to this regarding the Giants earlier. We have had some mild confirmation from Albert Breer that Brian Burns and the Panthers are in talks with the Giants for a possible trade, but nothing finalized, and that's been apparently going on for a while. So that would be a spicy meatball.
I mean, Kayvon Thibodeau, friend of the show, is strong, but certainly took a big leap forward in year 2. Thibodeau and Burns, okay, there you go, Giants fans. That would be something to hang your hat on. Now we'll see what the Panthers are asking for. I mean, would that cost them? Geez, first round pick?
I could see it. Maybe next year's first round pick.
Yeah, they can't do it this year, right? It would maybe a 2 this year and a 1 next year, and then all of a sudden this. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
It's not going to be that much. It's not going to be that much. I know they turned down 2 firsts, but the market's different now. It's different because you have to pay them right now, and it's just different. You might be able to get him for a 2, and then I would be happy with that. If I
love Panthers management turning down 2 first-round picks for Brian Burns.
And just remember, Dan, it's Kayvon, Burns, and Van Ginkel. Now we've got something going on in New York. The tide is turned in this very day for Giants.
And Singletary, because hey, you got to get Singletary in the building right off the bat. You drafted him in Buffalo, and you don't want to pay Saquon.
I think unless they're going to get a quarterback, the Giants think they got to really think hard now and checking in on Justin Fields if they haven't already.
Ooh, that could be an
all
option.
All right. See, there's a lot more to come, and as soon as we finish this podcast, more news will break, and it will be annoying. But also, we did threaten vengeance upon any newsmakers and teams that break our code of not dropping news right after we finish recording. So hopefully news breaks overnight at the earliest, or early tomorrow, and then we'll be back. We're getting on a bird tomorrow, hopefully with a trophy in hand, as we go to the iHeartRadio Awards tonight. Had a nice time last night. They had a private party, and it was all the nice little crowd, intimate gathering at this really nice hotel, St. Cecilia Hotel here in downtown Austin. And we saw the Black Keys, who did a nice 45-minute set of, good like Heartland Americana rock, good stomp to it, a good kind of dirty Detroit-style rock from the Cleveland based Black Keys. Mark was enjoying himself. Greg seemed to be okay with it. Everybody was.
I enjoyed it.
Time.
What are you talking about?
We had a great time.
Well, you were what I noticed, because I moved. I was
enjoying it.
You were on the side of the stage,
mm-hmm.
And then when I rotated around to the front of the stage for the second half of the show, it was like, oh, these guys actually sound great. From the side of the stage, you couldn't hear it as well, and I was like, Greg would have really liked this.
Well, you flagged us. Well, you flagged us down.
Me. It was only like 20 feet away, or just come over.
You seemed to be, because I could see you. I had a good sight line. It was a very small gathering, and you seemed to be in engrossed conversation. So I said, I'm going to let Greg be. But then I caught the Sestog's eye, and I waved my arms, and Sestog rolls over, and
yeah, we had a great time. I mean, it's quite an interesting crowd. I'll leave it right there. But
it's always tricky at a concert. Do you want to be on the side and have like a direct view? We were only like 20 feet from him, or whatever, 15 feet from him. Or if you're a smaller man like myself, do you want to go in the morass in the front and either not be able to see or burrow your way up to the front, which is possible when you're a troll-like figure like myself. There's a lot of decisions that go into it. It just felt like a chill night. I'm just going to chill on the side with a great sight line. But you're right. It probably
no judgments, bro.
Yeah.
No judgments at all. And tonight we're going to meet up with our old buddy Matt Tanton, who's worked on our show in the past. He's living out here now. We're going to try to get some good Texas barbecue, and then, head to the award show where, Mark, you have predicted victory for us, as I understand.
I feel strongly that we will win. That's what I've said. The feeling grows. Initially, I thought we had no chance. We're going against, Travis and Jason Kelsey, who seem to have like America in their vice grip at the moment. So it would be an incredible upset. But I believe that we're that type of show. We've always been that type of show, and we're hours away from a colossal American story.
Now, when I found out Club Shay Shay is like us, also distributed by iHeart, but even more directly, I thought that was possibly a bad bit of news for us. Mark brought up this theory that we're going to win around a couple of iHeart executives, I believe, last night, and one of the women said, it's just all about being dominated. So I was like, oh, that's not a good sign. That's not a good sign because I think she knows.
I believe that we will lose. I believe that we will lose. Tight end Will Dissly agrees to a 3-year, $14 million contract with the Chargers. So Gregg did not give Dissly any respect in his free agency 101, but obviously the Chargers thought highly of him. And I do believe that Jim Harbaugh knows a little bit about ball, so heads up on that.
I mean, I agree. He just didn't make the 101. I mean,
he was on R213.
He made less.
We had a nice blurb.
He made less than Colby Parkinson from the Rams. So I mean, let's not get too crazy. I do think the Chargers are going to be the team of the next couple of days. By the way, maybe they'll sign Danielle Hunter. They'll sign some like crazy players and make some trades. They're going to do lots of crazy stuff.
Mark, your Will Dissly.
What was your blurb?
Blurb was unbelievable. It's unfortunate it's going to be lost in the edit, but
that's okay. It's part of the process. I think you just have to enjoy the process and realize that some of your better work is going to be, invisible, but not to yourself.
We've lost roughly 2,100 words of content so far with guys coming off the board.
You guys are like Sofia Coppola's Elvis movie. Was it good? Was it bad? Who knows? Because an Elvis movie came out like right before it, and no one wanted another Elvis movie.
I'll just go again, Mark. I got this. No, just a no.
Actually, I saw the Coppola. It was a solid B-.
That is Coppola.
Coppola. Sorry.
Yeah, Coppola.
All right, that's it for this show. Yes, we'll be back if we have a trophy. That would be amazing. Like with the Oscars that just happened on Sunday, everyone gets an Oscar, right? When you win, like if you win,
yes,
best cinematography, like everyone on the team gets an Oscar, right? Like we're gonna get 3 trophies, right?
Yeah, like everyone in our building, apparently, even people deep in the IT department have Emmys, and we are the 3 people without Emmys, apparently, in the entire building.
Right.
And so, yes, they give it to everyone, except for us, apparently. So this is our vengeance. Yes,
All right.
Are you asking, will one of us get a trophy, and whose house
I don't think,
will it sit?
I guess
there better
if it's
be a
like
trophy.
Best supporting actor, just one guy gets it there.
Well, we could
Best
keep it in the
picture, I
Chris
don't know.
Wesley
Well, that's one
podcast
person,
studio, or we could kind of have a rotating. We could have Eric maybe work up an Excel spreadsheet, and we could kind of share it throughout the year. Have
Or
break
split
it
the
down by
baby.
week.
Just cut it into 3 parts, and we each take a part home.
Yeah, well, that's an option as well. Big Funk chimes in the chat, like the Stanley Cup. Yeah, you take it home, you get drunk with it, you have a good old time with your friends, and then you hand it to the next person, hopefully without a dent.
Don't the Kelseys
All right, you can hit
have
the
enough?
music.
Don't they have enough at this point?
Who?
They have enough.
Who?
The Kelseys. They've been given
the
enough.
Kelseys.
They're not going to get it.
You got 45-minute
Club Shay Shay.
speeches.
I don't like
you
this
stopped
Club
working.
Shay Shay thing. You do one interview that goes viral, and now we're going to give them awards.
I think it's very popular in general, but
Eric, you could hit the music literally anytime.
there is a trade though. We have developing news. The Lions are acquiring cornerback Carlton Davis from the Bucs, according to the Pellraiser, and he's not sharing this scoop. He's putting this out all by himself. That's a player who makes over $15 million a year. That's what some people would consider a number 1 cornerback. That's a big time trade.
You're getting played off like it's the Oscars. Congratulations. Till tomorrow. Heed the call.